back to Guitar Landscapes. I'm Wayne Cockfield, and today we're going to be talking about the suspended fourth chord. There's the sound right there. This is an A sus4 that I'm playing. And this particular voicing has the root, the fifth, the root, the fourth, and the fifth. It has a very spacey, open kind of sound, much like the A2 chord, the A sus2 chord. That sound for either of those chords, as I said in the previous video, has neither major or minor. So when you hear this chord, it's not committing to a harmony until you hear more chords around it. So let's take a look at the harmonized C major scale and see what other chords could fit around this chord. The first one would be C sus4, then D sus4, E sus4, F5 add sharp 4, because we have to stay diatonic, so that's why I have to play a B note here instead of the B flat, because that would put us in the key of F, and then we would have one flat in that key. Now let's move on. Then we get a G sus4, and then we could play an A sus4 up here, or we could play it down here. And then the last is a B flat 5 with a sus4. So let me play all those chords in order without speaking over it so you can hear it nice and cleanly. So you can see it has a very unique, spacey kind of sound like the sus2 chords did, but in a different way. Now, a C major scale will work fine over all of those chords because they're all being derived from a C major scale, just harmonized as root, fourth, fifth in a particular voicing. This voicing that I was playing was root, fifth, root, fourth. I left the fifth off on the top just to make the voicings a little easier to play. But if I just chose a couple of those and played them back to back in a chord progression, you can hear how it would establish a nice little tonality for a song or for a little solo section in a song. See, that sounds kind of cool, doesn't it? It's different, it's unusual, it's got a spacier kind of sound. I wouldn't say it's necessarily better than playing the sus2 chords, or just better than even just playing the harmonized major scale, but it has its own kind of sound about it. And of course those chords could be mixed with other chords, like you could use a major chord and a sus2 chord and a sus4 chord together in a chord progression, and that'll sound fine. So for instance, if I wanted to go like C sus2 to D sus4, right? See, because now I've got my little finger down. And then if I wanted to go to F with that add 4, here's what that might sound like. I got a little carried away there, and I played a few other variations of that. But I mixed in some major chords and some minor chords with that as well, some sus2 chords. And you can see just by playing around with these little voicings like this, you can get some interesting sounding chord progressions. And as I said, the C major scale will work well over all of that. This little scale, I think we played it earlier in the book, in that octave, and then we've also played it here. Different octave with different fingers, and then we played it here. That's a higher octave, and we've also played it here in the same octave in a different position. So you can take that scale and practice that around over the chord progression and just play around with it, do string bends, slides, that kind of thing, and see what you can come up with. Well, the last thing we're going to look at in this chapter are dyads. And we looked at the power chord dyads earlier, the root and fifth. There's also another shape that happens a lot in rock guitar, and that's this shape. And what I'm doing here is I've got my first finger on B, and then I've got my little finger on G. So I'm going from a C5, which is C and G, and I'm just lowering that C note to a B note. So, and that actually implies, the second chord implies a G chord. So we've got a C5 here, and then this chord is implying a G chord because we have a B note, which is the third of a G chord. Here's G, and there's the third above, so that's a B note. And then here, this G note would be the root. So it's the third and the root of the chord. So we get a feeling that we've gone from this chord to this chord just by moving those two notes. Now I could do the same thing with F. If I did F, I would be on the next two strings, and here's the shape. And now I just move my first finger down a fret. So here I've got F and C, F on the fourth string, and then C on the third string, and then I move that first finger down. That's the only one that moves, and I'm going to E and C. So now I'm getting a F5 going to this chord, which implies a C chord. The E note would be the third above C, and then of course that C note would be the root. So we get, so if I put those four chords together, I get this kind of sound. And once again, these little chord shapes are implying the key of C because of the half step between C and B and F and E, because those are the two half steps in the key of C. And then the other note, the G note here and the C note here, are also in the key of C. So here's the sound. If I put it in a little rock chord progression, it'll sound like this. Heard that chord progression, you might not look at it immediately and see a C major scale, but a C major scale will perfectly fit those. It will perfectly fit those two chords. So I hope these little shapes have helped you. I hope understanding the power chords, the sus2 chords, and the sus4 chords in this chapter have helped you. And then seeing how it interacts with the harmonized major scale. So take all of this stuff and put it to use. Write a song, write a chord progression, something to just improvise over. Find a friend and have him play the chords and you solo over, and then trade places, and you play the chords for him and he'll solo over it. And if you do that, you'll learn it much quicker. Always good to have another brother beside you working on the music. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Remember, there's always more. If you go to Guitar-Gps.com, you can pick up the workbook, and you can pick up Guitar Landscape if you don't already own it. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.